Dragonage the Vielguard is disappointing to me, and I say this without any ulterior motives or cultural agendas. This disappointment becomes especially pronounced when playing the game as a Dragonage fan. I suggest players to approach it as it were a new game from a different studio rather than a latest flagship title from a legendary bioware. It's not as bad as some insist. I find it fun and engaging enough to finish it. However, if you treat it something like it's not a Dragon Age game, this game is seriously lacking, even on its own terms. The game is seriously lacking as an RPG and suffers greatly in terms of writing and immersion. To me, this feels like it is unsure of its identity. If it's fair to say that it excels at nothing, while its weakest aspect should be its strongest, like the writing. This is disappointing to acknowledge, especially for a bioware game. However, it is still fun and possesses a certain level of quality. It is not a well-cooked meal, but it is not a complete garbage either. However, anyone who claims that this game is a serious contender for Game of the Year is delusional and lying themselves to think that it is anywhere near that level just because Inquisition had won it in a dry year does not mean that just because Dragon Age Inquisition had won a Game of the Year in 2014, which is one of the weakest years of games in my opinion, it does not mean that this game also deserves to be nominated. Tonight I will outline some of the pros and cons of this game. The architecture of this game is absolutely phenomenal. Whoever has designed this deserves a raise. I genuinely believe this is the best aspect of this entire game. I have lost count on how many times I just paused the game to use the photo mode after being captivated by beautiful scenery. The art style is reminiscent of oily paint which contributes to the effect. Although the graphics may appear goofy at first glance, they are truly stunning once you experience the game yourself. While I am not a fan of this art style since it detracts from the mature tone of the game and gives it somewhat a Fortnite-like feel, I cannot deny that the visual appeal resembles a gorgeous looking somewhat like a good Pixar movie. I appreciate what has been done with certain characters in terms of artistic design, like Emmerich, his design is so over the top and it effectively conveys the character and the vibe. There are some cool ideas such as bringing back griffons. The game features some great ideas such as the introduction of them and the use of Illuvian for traversing the world. I enjoy traveling around Hades and visiting places like Antiva, Tevinter and Ravine in a single game. The variety enriches the experience regarding the world, character and the factions. The game captures your attention whether you are in Antiva admiring the beautiful moonlight or in Minthras with the cyberpunk-like lights. The game boasts a strong and persistent cinematic direction, particularly in the cutscenes during main missions. However, I dislike the absence of cinematics during conversation with some of the NPCs, which was a feature in Inquisition. The game does remember your dialogue options, and I am not referring to your decision changing the outcome. Rather than I appreciate how the character recalls what you have previously said Yeah, Rook, just like what you said earlier. It is not such, it is not something of a big thing, but it is not a big thing, but the detail is cool and contributes to the immersion, even if it is not a critical aspect of the game and don't have much depth to it. The writing in this regard has much to be said online regarding the writing, and I won't delve deep into the details too much, but I will say though that Skillups have done a review of sorts where he said that the writing feels like an HR is in the room, and I cannot agree with him more. The writing is severely lacking across multiple dimensions. I genuinely believe the writer for this game lacks talent and are particularly poor at creating immersion. This assessment excludes any culture wars, or I am speaking solely about the lore, narrative and the story. This also seems that the writers are not well versed in the Dragon Age universe. The design often screams that I am a game. Play The design often screams I am a game. Play me. For instance, if a house is accessible, it is likely that because there is a loot to be found, and it is probably empty, you cannot interact with almost anything except the usual elements like text documents or loot boxes. Cities like Treviso fails to create an immersive environment, making it hard to believe that people actually live there. Zip lines are often used constantly to traverse the city. Is someone really going to use the zip line to buy breads in a grocery store in those cities? I don't think so. There are no NPC schedules, no roaming guards, and the guards don't even speak to you. And you can't even harm the NPCs, who provide no reaction to your actions. It is clear that the cities and the locations are designed to give an impression of real world, similar to the world of GTA or Skyrim. Even Dragon Age Origins had done a much better job at making you feel like a part of this environment. Like I said, poor immersion in general. You do not feel like you are role-playing here. The game lacks immersion in almost every aspect. You are constantly reminded that you are the player, not an adventurer in Thedas. Only you can die in your team. Your teammates are literally immortal. You cannot interact with the environments, and everything in the world is placed there solely for you to find. Access via puzzles and loot boxes. Every single object serves merely to affirm the gameplay mechanics, whether finding loots, coins, or Solas's dagger points. In cities, roads are blocked by static NPCs, which impede your progress. I can overlook this at some extent, but it becomes frustrating to see them repeatedly after visiting the same cities for the 9th time. All NPCs are set pieces, and most of them lack any form of AI. The Venatori are omnipresent in an illogical enemy placements, standing idly in public places, and the game does not acknowledge or justify your encounters, diminishing the immersion once again. People don't even react to Venatori whenever you battle them in the middle of a street. I was even chased by a darkspawn while the guard stood by, unresponsive because he is not an NPC, just another set piece. The entire game feels like a collection of God of War maps glued together, and God of War is a far more impressive. I'm sorry, but I cannot accept the excuse that all Dragon Age games have its own distinct identity, and this is the hallmark of a series. This is an extreme case of revisionism. People criticized Inquisition for not feeling like a Dragon Age game in terms of gameplay and design elements like world building and visual identity. Yet, the game Inquisition embodies Dragon Age far better than Vielguard did. And I cannot believe I am defending Inquisition here. I don't even like that game that much. You could remove the Dragon Age title from this game and I would bet many of you won't even realize that it's a part of the franchise. And many of you won't even realize that it was a part of a franchise until they saw Varric's face. Yes, I'm not exaggerating. Anyone who criticized Dragon Age 2 for its darkspawn design must be scratching their heads by now. Mobile-like UI is everywhere in this game. Like everything from the inventory to the shop menu feels like it is designed for a mobile game targeting a mobile generation. While this isn't necessarily bad, it is not something I want to see in a Dragon Age. It cheapens the experience. Dumbed down kid-friendly lore is everywhere in this game. Like it is so prevalent that no one can convince me that this game was not designed to be marketed around Fortnite generation for kids. There is barely any blood and the writing is so non-confrontational and very safe, even though we constantly deal with mature themes such as slavery, dictatorship, political fighting and fascist cultists. It feels like those themes are not explored in a mature way by adults, rather than it feels like a Marvel movie. One of the worst parts about this game is the bland and uninteresting companions. This also suffers from poor writing. The ideas and the designs of the character are cool, but they come out very forced, making it feel like someone tried too hard to make them appear interesting. For example, Davrin and Nev embodies the idea of a badass as envisioned by a 10-year-olds. They constantly reaffirm how cool they are, which ultimately makes them lame. I found Lucan is somewhat interesting, but even he falls into the trap of never-ending demon mantra that the game never lets you forget. Tash is the worst of them all. She unfortunately comes off as a caricature of a certain demographic. Mediocre to bad voice acting. I think this is mostly due to the direction rather than the voice acting themselves. Some characters like Bellara are overly expressive to their speech, while Nev comes off as very monotone. The narrative is very disappointing, especially when the plot speaks up what it began from Dragon Age 2. I don't want to delve too deep into it, but the final third of the game is probably the best part of the game, but by that point you have already checked out. Like the villains of these games are so generic, like I don't understand why can't they use Solus for the main villain. Solus is still in this game, but his role is so much diminished and his main role as a villain is replaced by two generic mustache-twirling villains. The gameplay also feels like it's a repetitive hack and slash type of deal. This game feels like I am playing Marvel Avengers with two friends on a map designed for co-op, constantly slashing the same enemies who only die after I throw my 10th ultimate at their face. This is not what I want from any RPG, let alone Dragon Age. If I wanted to play a action combat type of game, I would just play Devil May Cry or any other series known for its combat. The, the team at bioware aren't talented enough to make a truly great action combat. So I don't understand why they try for this. While Vielguard doesn't do a bad job with its combat, it is disappointing to present itself as the main appeal because it doesn't stack out from other action combat style games on the market. The exploration in this game is also lackluster in my opinion. It is one of the worst aspects of the game. As someone who likes to explore the entire map before moving forward, I tend to value what I might find the most absurd and obscure places. Yet there are almost never-ending interesting things to be found in the corner and edges of the Vielguard map. You can roam around the map for minutes only to find 15 coins as an upgrade for your mundane dagger or an irrelevant text if you are lucky. There are no mysteries or interesting environments, phenomena to discover at all. If there is something remotely interesting, you typically find it while doing a quest, and the quests themselves, especially the side quests, are not fun or engaging, feeling more like a burden that you undertake just to improve your standing with factions, to upgrade their shops. The poor environmental storytelling is that aspect of the game is very much lacking. Furthermore, even when there is some environmental storytelling, the game literally screams at you, pointing with all its finger that oh my god, look at that. Like it's so childish. The uninspired characters, including the NPCs, from your allies and your companions to your enemies, comes out very poorly written and uninspired. There are some solid designs and ideas like the Quake Master in Antiva or Lucanis captors, but they are almost always poorly executed. For example, the individuals who improved Lucanis was a great disappointment. I expected a terrifying and tyrannical figure, but he comes across as a joke, both in the dialogue and in voice acting. He was not presented properly either, and this is a frequent issue throughout the game. Weird spacing decisions also makes it baffling. Like, hey, let's send two dwarf rogues to stop a literal god from destroying the world. And no, you can't get any explanation as to why after playing the game, at least for 30 hours. What about the Inquisition? You mean the organization we spent the entire previous game leading up to the combat such as threat? Yeah, what about it? I don't understand. Like they threw everything out of the window from the last two games they had built up. It also has stupid inspirations from games like God of War. It is extremely clear that some of the EA executives saw God of War 2018 and said, that's it, we want that, put more of that. And they pushed bioware for this type of gameplay. From how Rook opens the loot boxes to various effects and gameplay aspects such as runes on Solas's dagger, it is clearly borrowing from God of War, and this harms the game more than it benefits it. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing Immortal Phoenix. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing Immortal Phoenix Rising due to not having to buy Switch to play Zelda Breath of the Wild. In conclusion, it is nowhere near as bad as some people make it out to be. and it is still playable game that offers some fun. However, it remains uninspired, bland, toned down and dumbed down and immersion breaking. Railroad experience. I also feel like this game was not intended to be marketed at me. So far I would give it a 4 out of 10. It is not a good game and I cannot imagine any good any good RPG enthusiast to be pleased by it. This game doesn't do anything good in my opinion, and even though it does something good in terms of graphics like the architecture, the art direction is so disappointing that it's not worth it. The game would fare a lot better if it were not made by bioware or it is not in Dragonage franchise. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching.